Orchestration Recipes. Now, when you hear the word orchestration, maybe you think this doesn't apply to you. But before you click away from this video, thank you for watching this far. Do me a favour and yourself a favour and click on the first link in the description. This is a promo video for Orchestration Recipes, and it is funny. It is true, and it is funny because it's true. And even if you don't use sample libraries, replace the word sample libraries with synthesizer, and I am pretty sure you will get it. In this video, I will tell you what orchestration recipes are. Essentially, they are a set of video tutorials. We are looking at volume 4 in particular here. I will mention volumes 1, 2 and 3 as we go. But here I will show you the dashboard so you see what you get and what the layout's like. I will explain the different sections and what you will learn. I will tell you who I think might be interested in this course, and it may not just be people who are interested in orchestration and sample libraries. Now, I have all 4 volumes. I bought them with my own money, and this video is not sponsored. Maybe it should be. So let's start with what exactly are orchestration recipes. Well, they are the brainchild of Philip Johnston. He's a composer, an arranger, an educator, and he's also Australian. Think Crocodile Dundee with a baton instead of a knife. Yeah, that's probably not a good analogy. But there are 2 things I really like about this guy. He's Australian and he has what I would call a soft Australian accent. He doesn't once say "g'day," which is probably just as well. But I just find his accent very appealing. He is very easy to listen to. Now, this volume 4, has around 3 hours of video tutorials which he narrates. So you need a voice which you can listen to. And also his way of presentation is wonderful. I binge watched this full volume in one sitting. I have started to go through it again to pick out the details. The other thing I like is his sense of humour. It's very gentle. It probably makes you smile rather than laugh, but you don't want to be laughing out loud when you're watching a video tutorial. So this is probably a combination of Philip being Philip and being Australian. I know I need to meet more Australians. I tend to think that Australians and, well, us in the north of England, I think we probably share a similar sense of humour. But again, this makes the videos very easy to watch and entertaining. So he is not only an educator, he is an entertaining educator. How many of us have sat through lessons at school, lectures at college or university, where the lecturer obviously knew their stuff, but the teaching was so dry and boring, or perhaps they just couldn't get the point across? Well, I'm pretty sure I'm not alone in that. This will not happen here. Philip explains everything exceptionally well and in an entertaining fashion. Here's a short example of the sort of humour you might expect. It's from a lesson which explains how to transition smoothly from any key into just about any other key.
So here we've gone from this key signature all the way to this one, which is not exactly remote. Harmonically, it's the equivalent of going camping by pitching a tent on your front lawn. Now that might not matter if you're assembling a chord progression for a nursery rhyme or putting together a trailer for a movie about pirates, but it's difficult to convey a sense of anxiety or something alien if each new harmonic destination is pretty much exactly where you thought you were going, which is why film and game composers in particular also need transit systems that are designed to take you to unexpected keys. Now, there are lots of transit systems that do that. So, for example, you can work with scales that have embedded chromatic mediants, such as the Swiss Army hexatonics that we'll look at later in the series. You could chromatically fracture some of the common tones, as we looked at in Volume 3 in the Dislocated Tethers video. Or you could spend a decade or 2 at college studying Neo-Riemannian theory or Wagnerian chromaticism or the harmonic progressions of Prokofiev. Or you could just use this.
Right, so what are orchestration recipes about? Well, yes, they are essentially about orchestrations and using sample libraries to create those orchestrations. Now, the first 2 volumes essentially say if you want to create this sort of sound, use these sort of instruments and use them in this way. So if you want to write a piece in the style of a period drama, or a heroic piece of music, or a piece of music which would evoke nostalgia, then volumes 1 and 2 will explain how to do this. They tell you what instruments to use and how to arrange them, but not reviewing those here. Volume 3 and Volume 4, which we are looking at here, are what Philip calls spices, and they are essentially composition techniques. I would say the first 2 volumes are more like arranging techniques. Volumes 3 and 4 are compositional techniques, and that is one of the reasons why I find them so interesting. Here is the dashboard for Volume 4. The dashboard for all the volumes are identical apart from the list of lessons down the left. There are 4 lessons in Volume 4, so I'll just briefly explain what you learn in each of them. The first one is elevated majors. And one thing to say is that a lot of these lessons are about sometimes quite complex and intricate compositional techniques, but Philip explains them in very, very simple ways. Now, I'll talk about music theory in a second, but he explains them in such a way that you really don't need much music theory. That itself is an achievement. He uses terms like elevated majors and augmented wormholes to make the process easy to remember and understand. You will not find these terms in any musical theory textbook. But these techniques are not just about one thing. He takes the general idea and runs with it, and each section has around about half a dozen examples which he works through a step at a time, and each one is a variation of the basic idea. So you are getting a lot of compositional ideas and suggestions and techniques in this one volume. So this first one, elevated majors, essentially is about taking a major chord and raising the lower note a semitone. Now that creates a sort of disturbing effect. It's not quite major, it's not quite minor, it's an in-between sort of sound which you can use for all sorts of compositions. Now, I'm not going to say an awful lot more about this because on his YouTube channel, which of course I will link to, there is an example, an extract taken from this lesson. So you will see the sort of sounds it can produce, the sort of music it can produce, and how it is taught. The next one, augmented wormholes, sounds like something from Star Trek. It explains how to move from one key into virtually any other key very smoothly, so it doesn't sound jarring. As with the other examples, there are several ways you can use this technique, and he explains them and demonstrates them all. The fourth lesson is about sidecars, and this is how to produce a certain type or certain types of extended chord from an open chord. Now, this tends to produce very big, lush sounds, ideal for strings and synth pads. I'll say more about this in a moment. And the final lesson is Lydian terraces. You've probably heard of modes and the Lydian mode, and you may even have used the Lydian mode, perhaps even unknowingly. The Lydian mode is known as the bright mode. If you want to create a positive, uplifting piece of music, you will probably navigate towards a major key. However, as Philip points out, a major key will only give you an 8 out of 10 on the brightness scale. The Lydian mode will give you a 10 out of 10. It is brighter than major. So this lesson explains how to use it to create these sort of effects, and in one of the examples he shows you how to use Lydian modes to create a 12 out of 10 on the brightness scale. So that's a quick look at the lessons. As far as the presentation goes, everything essentially is contained in the video. He explains how to build up a cue from 1 or 2 instruments to a complete orchestration. And he plays the cue at each stage so you can see the effect that adding each instrument or each layer has. The audio examples are of course contained within the videos themselves, but you can also download the WAV files separately. You also get PDFs of the scores of the examples, and you get MIDI files if you want to attempt to recreate any of the examples yourself in your own DAW. Now, if your knowledge of music theory is a little bit wobbly, you may be wondering if you'll be able to understand these ideas. All the cue examples are presented as scores. Now, if you read music, this is absolutely brilliant. You can see how the pieces are constructed and built up. If you don't read music, you can probably get an idea of what's going on just by looking at the score and realizing that these are long notes and these are short notes, and how the pieces stack up one on top of another. There must be dozens of videos on YouTube about how to read music, and you don't need to be able to do this at a very high level to see what's going on in these scores. But even if you don't read music, all the examples are explained using a keyboard with coloured keys and coloured dots to show notes and chords, how they are formed and how notes move from one pitch to another.
So here's a good candidate for an elevated major. It's an E-flat major chord, it's got two E-flats, so it has two root notes. We take the lower of those two E-flats, we bump it up to an E natural, we've got our elevated major sound.
Now, if you've seen some of my other videos, I know I've got problems with my eyes. I do read music, but I just can't make out the scores at the moment. So these keyboard explanations I find very easy to understand and very easy to follow. Now, how much music theory do you actually need? Well, you do need to know what chords are, how to form major chords and minor chords. You also really should know a little bit about scales. You should know the notes in a major scale or a minor scale. And if you can do that, I think the keyboard explanations will be fairly obvious and easy to follow. Now, I think it's worth mentioning that in Volume 3, which has a different set of spices, a different set of compositional techniques, a lot of the examples there are given in piano roll format. Now, this is useful in, well, one way in particular. In the examples, Philip stacks the different instruments one above the other, so you can see which instruments are playing which lines, and how they are separated from the other instruments. Now, I don't know about you, but I just can't read piano rolls, not in the same way that I can read a music score. I just don't find it easy or intuitive. And I think virtually 99% of the tutorial videos I've seen on YouTube which teach some aspect of composition use the piano roll. Now, I think this is fine for melodies and chords and moving the notes in a chord up and down in the piano roll to create different voicings, but trying to show an arrangement in a piano roll, for me, certainly it has limitations. So Volume 3 has a lot of this. If you really do not like music notation but like the idea of these recipes, then Volume 3 might be a better option for you. Incidentally, Volume 3 also has PDF score downloads, so if you do read music, you are certainly not left out in Volume 3. So in Volume 4 we do get little bits of piano roll, but not to the extent that we did in Volume 3. And I reckon Philip probably realised that it made a lot more sense and it was far more easy to understand these examples in notation form. So if you don't use sample libraries, if you are not into orchestration, is this course of any interest to you? Well, if you're looking for a knockout chord progression for your next house track or trance track, then possibly not. By comparison, shall we say that popular music genres tend to have more simple chord progressions. However, that does not mean to say that you don't have any takeaways from this at all. The sidecar examples to create extended chords, I think, could well be used in lo-fi music. I think it could also be used in ambient music. And if you're creating upbeat music, let's say euphoric trance, then using the Lydian mode, and one of the examples in the Lydian mode could take the brightness level from a 10 up to a 12. Now, the examples are definitely aimed at sample libraries, at the orchestrator and at cinematic music. So you will have to make some sort of adjustment to the techniques which he presents. And if you use synthesizers rather than sample libraries, but want to create these cinematic effects, then yes, absolutely. These are compositional techniques which Philip scores out using traditional orchestral instruments, but there's no reason why you couldn't get similar effects. They will be different, of course, but using the same compositional techniques, you will get similar type sounds and similar harmonies and progressions using synthesizers. That is one area I am very keen to explore. So if you want more information about orchestration recipes, about the different volumes and the sort of things they teach you, take a look at his YouTube channel, link in the description. There are a lot of videos there, and some of them even work through complete examples, so you can really see the sort of information that he is presenting. Now, Orchestration Recipes is up to Volume 4. I suspect there may well be a volume 5, and who knows how long this series will continue. But donning my Sherlock Holmes hat, I have discovered some recipes which may appear in the next volume. So in one of the promo videos we actually get this list of 5 spices. And if you look at the names on the jars, you can see that all but one made it into volume 4. There is a slight anomaly between the whole tone wormhole and the augmented wormhole, but I'm just going to assume that these are the same thing. Maybe they aren't. Maybe this is a new thing which we will see in the next volume. But you will notice one spice which does not appear anywhere, and that is tectonic pedal notes. So perhaps he has something to say about that in the next volume. So I hope this has given you a good idea of what is in Orchestration Recipes and what to expect, particularly in Volume 4. And if you check out the videos on his YouTube channel, I think you've got a really good idea of what each of the volumes contains. If you have any questions about them, Philip is probably your best first port of call. I have had a couple of email communications with him and I've found him very approachable. But if you think I can help with any questions, then please leave them in the comments and I will do my best to answer them. Speaking personally, as someone who is really interested in composition, all types of composition, even though I probably haven't produced many orchestral compositions, I found the series fascinating. If you were more interested in composition than in arranging, I would certainly recommend Volume 4 or Volume 3. Volume 4 has even more detail than Volume 3. It has more examples. I think it is better produced and better laid out. You can tell he spent a really long time producing these videos and doing the animations. So I hope you found that interesting, fascinating perhaps, who knows, helpful, inspirational, any of the above. If you have any of his recipes or buy one, let me know what you think of it. Even if you just watch the videos on his YouTube channel, let me know what you think. And let me know if you found these in any way helpful in your compositional process. If you have enjoyed this video, perhaps you'd like to consider subscribing to the channel, ringing the bell. Thank you, so you get informed of new videos as soon as I release them. And please do click the big thumb, providing you like the video, of course, because that is a big help as well. I am off to try some new compositional techniques. I can't wait. I will see you again very soon in the next video.